And now for our feature presentation.
You're listening to the JB and Goldwater Show. Live, loud, and online.
Puts it up. Whoa! Here goes Davis. Oh my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game. American Pharoah, it's finally the one. American Pharoah has won the Triple Crown. And Bonds hit right high. It's a deep. It is out of here. High fly ball into right field. She is gone. Unbelievable! A home run for Gibson, and the Tigers have won the game 5-4. I don't believe what I just saw.
Here are your hosts, Jamie Bradford and Darren Goldwater.
All right, greetings and a good Monday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online. It is 12:02 p.m., and it is July the 20th, this month, flying by, Darren, as we inch towards August and maybe inch towards a real decision on the fate of college football, maybe sometime next week. We'll see. Try to update you on some of that today here on our program. Darren Goldwater, Jamie Bradford here until 2 o'clock. You can watch us on Facebook, you can watch us on Twitter, and you can watch us on YouTube by typing in JB and Goldwater. And you can listen live every day between the hours of 12 and 2 p.m. on the Podbean app if you do not want to see our mean mugs on your computer screen or TV screen or however you watch us. And if you would, go to our website, jbandgoldwatershow.com. That is where you can find all the details of our program, every platform, all of this information. It's all available in one central hub, jbandgoldwatershow.com. He is at Darren Goldwater. I am at Sports Radio JB. How was your weekend, brother?
It was good. I mean, nothing too earth-shattering, so that's good. Nothing crazy. Did a little bit of yard work yesterday and watched a little bit of golf and took a nice little sunset cruise on Friday with our neighbors. So that was pretty cool, and jumped into the water with the kids. Yeah. So had some fun. Had a little outdoorsy, at least for me, weekend.
Yeah. Well, we did too. We were outside the whole weekend. I actually took the kids down to Edisto Beach on Saturday morning, where it is just so calm compared to trying to get on and off of Folly. It's well worth the 45-minute drive for me.
Yeah.
And then we came home, and they napped the whole way home, so I thought, well, they've taken their nap. Put them in the golf. We literally just transferred the stuff from the car into the golf cart, rode right across the street, put them in the pool, hung out in the pool, and then did yard work all day yesterday. So, yeah, we were outside literally all weekend.
Perfect.
It was good. And I fell asleep at 8:30 both nights.
That's good right there.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fantastic.
I slept real late. Actually, both days I slept late. So I did the reverse.
Yeah.
I went to bed normal and then slept late Saturday and Sunday.
I can't do that. Hannah, Riley will sleep till about 7:45 if we let her 8, maybe. Hannah, no chance. She was up early in Adam yesterday morning, so her and we were playing in the playroom at about 6 a.m. But that's okay because I had about 9 hours of sleep. I was fine.
There you go.
But 843-321-8893, if you are listening or watching and you think, hey, I'd like to give these guys a call and just say hello, you can do it. 843-321-8893. Put that number in your phone, save it, give us a shout between 12 and 2 o'clock Monday through Friday right here on our program. Lawton Swan, he'll join us at 12:30. He is the owner of Clemson Sports Talk. They are on daily in Columbia on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Also available online every day at ClemsonSportsTalk.com. But Lawton, this is part 3 of an 8-part series this week, and we'll talk about the running backs. It's our position group preview series for Clemson football as we head into 12:20. Gene Sapikoff at 1:30 today. He's got a column out, and it's an interesting column because Dawn Staley has been very vocal over the last month or so with social issues, and she has actually just called out the University of South Carolina, the place that employs her, for lack of diversity within the athletics department. Now, there's more to this story. Dawn is not just being some rude, basketball coach. She has some points that I think are pretty valid points, and then she has some things that I would also question. If I was talking to Dawn, I would ask her what she means by this, and I don't mean that in any bad way. But we're going to talk about that with Gene. We'll talk about football with Gene. We'll talk about some baseball with Gene, because guess what, folks? Baseball is back. On Thursday, Major League Baseball will return to America. And last night, I actually did catch a few innings, I think 3 innings, the first 3 innings of the Cubs-White Sox game on ESPN. And I just wanted to watch baseball first and foremost, but I started kind of paying attention to the broadcast itself and to how this is going to unfold. It's not bad. Without fans in the stands, it's not bad. They had Boog on last night, John Shambi, and he was joined by Rick Sutcliffe and Chipper Jones. And I think Chipper's really good. I mean, Chipper speaks in Chipper tone, so if you don't like the way Chipper kind of methodically moves his way through different sentences, then you're probably not going to like his broadcast. But if you like to be educated on the sport of baseball, you will like his broadcast. He was really good.
Him and Shambi have a great rapport.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just phenomenal. So the pairing of the two of them was really a natural. And you're going to see a lot of Chipper this year because there's a lot of Mets games on ESPN, and ESPN is not going to allow Alex Rodriguez to be a part of those broadcasts because he's obviously still trying to buy the team. Mm-hmm. So you'll get a lot of Chipper, and
which means the Met killer will be talking about them on national TV.
In fact, that's the first broadcast of his, like actual real as opposed to last night fake broadcast of his. Did you like the crowd noise?
Yeah, I did. You know what? I'll be honest. I didn't really pay attention to it. It was just like a background ambience that I just didn't pay attention to. It was fine.
That's good. That's what they're going for. It just, you would have noticed if it was dead silent. Mm-hmm. But if it sounded somewhat normal and you didn't even notice, it's like a ref. If you don't notice that they're out there, then they're doing a fine job. So in paying attention to some of the intra-squad games with the piped-in noise, and a lot of the noise is actually coming from the stadium as opposed to the broadcast.
Right.
And it, have done well. It really, I'm like you. I've enjoyed it and haven't really thought twice about it.
No, I didn't think too much about it at all. So I thought it was good, and it should be pretty darn good on Thursday when we actually get to see the things that matter, the games that matter in Major League Baseball. So looking forward to that. We'll talk about some of that today and throughout the week. Corey McCartney will join us later on this week, and we'll be set and ready to go on Thursday evening as your Nationals and the New York Yankees and also Giants-Dodgers late that night on ESPN. So back-to-back on the Four-Letter Network. If you're craving baseball, you're going to get it in a heavy dose starting Thursday all throughout the weekend. Fox, ESPN, the MLB Network, they are just overloading everybody with baseball, and they should. Why? I mean, there's nothing else.
Exactly.
So why not? So it's coming. No doubt about that. All right, we'll also get to the NFL. The players, they're frustrated. They should be frustrated with the NFL. The NFL is not necessarily giving them clear guidance as to what the protocols will be with COVID-19. Their hashtag is "We want to play," guys. We want to play. We just want to make sure it's going to be safe. And how does this thing unfold? And so I agree with a lot of the players here. They need some answers. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about a very interesting story, if there's some teeth to this, which I think there is, in the Pac-12. Rudy Carpenter, former quarterback at Arizona State, who's also now a radio host, he tweeted over the weekend that there's a group of players that they want things. They're demanding certain things, or they're going to sit out the 2020 season if they have one. So we'll get to that. Some Bama news. There was a rumor flying around about who they will open against. Now the rumor is who they actually might open against.
But the rumor was awesome.
Yeah, the rumor was awesome, but now it's – okay, well, let's settle this down a little bit. So we'll get to that. We'll get to the athletics column on Group of 5 FCS, maybe playing in the spring permanently. So that's all ahead here on our program, plus John Rahm and what a win for him this weekend. My goodness, he blew out the field. And Tiger Woods, the good and bad of his weekend, as he gets back into the flow of things. But I do want to start, really, truly start, Darren, with Phil Steele's top 25. And there's a reason why I want to start with this. Because we had Phil on Friday. He was excellent, as he is on every broadcast. And he released his top 25 over the weekend. And the top 10 reads like this. Ohio State at 1, Clemson at 2, Alabama at number 3, at 4, Oklahoma. So the usual suspects at the top of the list there. And at number 5, he's got Texas A&M. The Aggies, led by Kellen Mond, ahead of LSU, the defending national champions, at 6. At 7, Georgia. Surprising by some to see both A&M and LSU ahead of the Bulldogs. There's Notre Dame at 8. And at 9, he's got Oregon. And at 10, your Penn State Nittany Lions. Let me read the rest of the list here. The Trojans of Southern Cal at 11, this according to Phil Steele. Texas at 12, so maybe a resurgence of sorts for some of the traditional powers of the sport. At 13, Florida. 14, Wisconsin. Michigan checks in at 15. North Carolina at 16. A string right here, Darren, of ACC coastal teams. 17, Miami. 18, Virginia Tech. Remember, he mentioned on the program on Friday, he thought that the ACC Coastal was going to be the most improved division in college football this year. What follows is a string of SEC programs. 19, Auburn. 20, Tennessee. 21, Kentucky. And then UCF at 22, Iowa at 23, Oklahoma State at 24, and Memphis rounding out Phil Steele's top 25. And I always put more stock in Phil Steele's top 25 because if things play out generally, he usually has done the most research, and not just research by looking at numbers, research by actually speaking with coaches of and of opposing, and trying to use all that information to calculate his preseason top 25 and beyond every year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me bring this story closer to home. If you're a South Carolina fan, there is a real argument, Darren, that this schedule is much more difficult than last year's schedule for two reasons. One, last year everybody looked at Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson as 3 top 5 teams, which, of course, Carolina beat the Bulldogs, but 3 top 5 teams as the headliners for, this is the most difficult schedule in the country. Throw in the fact they got to go to College Station. They have to play Florida. Wow, oh, my God. Wow, what a difficult stretch. And they were right. There's no question about that. I think it ended up being the second-ranked schedule in the country. Well, I think you and I collectively, right, we're in serious doubt that they're going to play a 12-game season.
Very much so.
Okay, so let's say that right now that the popular trend, if they can accomplish this, is an 8-2 model in the ACC and the SEC, which would be your 8 conference games that you're scheduled to play, and then 2 games against the ACC. Maybe might find a way to work the Big 12 into this.
They've pretty much lumped the Big 12, SEC, and ACC together, saying they could all work in unison.
Yeah.
So the 8 and 2 is 8 conference and then 2 out of conference, but within those 3. So for Clemson and South Carolina, that would be 1.
There's 1.
And then pick your other.
You figure out the other one. Right, okay. All right, so if we have a football season, and if that is the schedule, then you would know 9 of the opponents South Carolina would play. You don't know who the other one is yet. Let's just hope it's not somebody else in the top 25 because of this reason here. That would put, based on Phil Steele's preseason rankings, and again, I'm comparing this to what the 2019 schedule looked like. A lot of folks came into this year thinking, okay, the early season starts out really well for the Gamecocks. They got a chance to really get some momentum before they hit a very crucial set of games where they're going to need to win some. And then that daunting task of November, as laid out in the original schedule, Georgia coming to town, going to LSU. You do have the Wofford game and then at Clemson. Well, now, based on what Phil Steele has presented, you would play 4 of the if you're at South Carolina, 4 of the top 7 teams on the road at preseason, second-ranked Clemson to more than likely finish the year. You'd welcome 5th-ranked preseason Texas A&M to town. On the road, preseason 6th-ranked LSU, and you would also welcome 7th-ranked preseason Georgia. You'd also go on the road to 13th-ranked Florida. So 5 of the top 13 teams on the Gamecock schedule, according to Phil Steele, and 7 of the top 21, because at 20 and 21, you've got Tennessee, who would come to Columbia, and then number 21, Kentucky, the Gamecocks, scheduled to go to Lexington. Well, my simple math here says that 7 of 10 means 70% of your scheduled games are against top 21 opponents, and 50% of them are against top 13 opponents, and 40% are against top 7 opponents. In addition, I think it was like you got Florida, Clemson, LSU, and Kentucky. 40% of your games on the road against top 21 opponents.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, and we knew it was going to be tough. I mean, brutally tough. We knew that, right?
That leaves Missouri, Vanderbilt, and whoever the hell else that other game is, if it's not, I don't know, Alabama.
Right, and then you wonder what
it wouldn't be, but
what the bowl situation may look like. So going down to 10 games, and if that's the schedule, like I don't know what bowl qualification is going to be used. They've already said you can count FCS wins, but if you don't have those games on your schedule, then you're not going to be able to count them as wins.
Right.
So do you need 5 wins, 5 out of 10 to go to a bowl? Are they going to have the bowls? But it makes the road pretty like black diamond hilly if you're going down that slope.
It does. I mean, so a couple of quick observations here. One, this should dramatically change what you deem successful this year for the Gamecocks. I think they're a talented team. They are a talented team. They've got 9 guys on the defensive line that are 4 or 5 star. You realize that?
Yep.
9 guys, and 7 at the wide receiver position, and they have a 4-star quarterback on the roster, a 5-star quarterback on the roster, and a grad transfer senior on the roster. They've got a 5-star at running back. They have 2 4-stars at running back, if you just go by stars. They've got multiple offensive linemen that are starters that would be 4 stars. And in addition to the depth, I think there's 5 or 6 of them. I think 5. On the defensive side of the football, you'd be starting 2 5-stars up front. You'd be starting at least 3 4s in this 3 4-stars in the second. So they in the secondary. So they're talented, but so are all these other teams. So if you win 5 games, do you deem that season a success? Well, by virtue of if you played that 10-game schedule, Darren, and you won 5 games, you pulled some upsets. You had to. Because 70% of your schedule is against teams that are ranked higher than you. So if you just took chalk, you'd say, well, they're staring at a 3-7 season. We don't even know who that other opponent would be yet. But in order to have a successful season, to get to 500 or better, you're going to have to pull some upsets. So if you pull some upsets, you're going to have some top 25 wins, if not higher, top 15, top 10 maybe. And then you get to a bowl. So it's a winner-take-all. It's a winner-take-all, loser-take-all type mentality for the Gamecocks. Like, you're either going to win your way to a pretty good year, or you're going to lose your way to a season.
The problem is that Will Muschamp is fairly on the hot seat, right? I mean, he needs to win some games. So the expectations can be altered, yeah, but in the end, if there's 3 or 4 wins on there and it's a 3-7 or 4-6, is that going to be enough? So I think the expectations for the Gamecocks this year may not be necessarily how many games are we going to win, but what are these games going to look like? Are we in it at the end? We being the Gamecocks. I'm clearly not a Gamecock fan. Is South Carolina competitive? And it's not just competitive. Are they giving themselves a chance to win? Because that's what you want to see. Mm-hmm. You want to see that the team is improving as the year goes along. You want to know that you do have a shot to win. And then if there are a couple games where you do have a shot to win, then you really want to see a few of those go your way.
Yeah.
And that's going to be my measure of success for the Gamecocks, because to look at that schedule and say, phew, they should go 7-3, like, well, that would be a hell of a year.
Oh.
That'd be fantastic.
It'd be the win of all wins.
It'd be fantastic.
It'd be unbelievable.
Right. So if you want to put the bar there, that's fine. That's a really high bar. I think it's more about, let's watch the play on the field. Let's watch how some of these groups are developing, how as a collective whole they're coming along, and is this team markedly better than last year's team? Whatever the record may be, are they clearly a better team than last year?
To your point, so I agree with you here, because what you're saying is this could be a better football team, and the record could be worse.
Yeah.
Or similar. It could correlate. Let me actually say it that way, because last year, if you went 4-8 in a 12-game schedule, I guess essentially that would mean that you could go, 3-7 this year, or 4-6. And it basically correlates based on the number of games you've played. 3-7 would more correlate than anything. And you could be a better football team. I'll say that, like, so over the last 5 or 6 years, let's say essentially since the last 11-2 campaign, which was in 2013. So you got 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. You got the last 6 years. All right, so last year they beat Kentucky. They ended that 5-game losing streak. They had hurdled Tennessee in the East. There was really no question about that. I know they've lost some games to the Vols, but they have been a better program over the last decade than Tennessee has been. But now what you're seeing, when we talked to Phil the other day, I mean, Kentucky returns like 17 starters, including their quarterback, Terry Wilson, back. He's healthy. And then you've got Tennessee, obviously, who's turned the corner. We think under Jeremy Pruitt demolished the game. They didn't have South Carolina didn't even have a prayer in Knoxville last year. Beat them by 20 points. It was ugly. And, of course, that they come to Columbia this year. But y'all, here's what we know. We know where Florida and Georgia are. Until they're knocked off their perch, which doesn't seem to be in the near future, they're going to be every year picked essentially 1 and 2 in the East until somebody proves that they're better than either one of those programs. So of this group here, which I would lump Missouri into this, even though this year they're not there, but Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, you got to be the best of that group.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to fight your way to the top. But you can't, if you're Carolina, you can't let Tennessee re-leap you in the totem pole in the East. And you got to string another group of wins together against Kentucky, because if Kentucky beats you this year, forget about last year's win. That's 6 of 7 that the Wildcats would have beat you, Darren. You can't build your program if you can't win your division. So I'm not saying they're going to win the division, but they can't win the division unless they beat that group of teams.
And Phil's got them, second to last in the East Division right now. And if you remember last week, and we'll have Gene Sapikoff on later in this show, maybe we'll revisit this, but last week was supposed to be the SEC meetings, and we were deciding, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, we were deciding what the stories would be, like just having some fun. If the world was actually the normal world, what would we be talking about at the SEC meetings? And one of Gene's first thoughts was, well, one of the things would be, has Tennessee jumped the Gamecocks again for supremacy, not necessarily the top of the league, but for supremacy in the middle of the portion of the SEC East? And he said that would have been one of his big questions. Phil Steele is high on Tennessee. He's high on Kentucky. So regardless of whether you're South Carolina or even, say, an LSU, we don't know exactly what they're going to look like coming out of the gates here with 14 guys gone in the NFL and a new quarterback who's been there for a while. But, we don't know what they're going to look like. If you just take it by a record, if you're the casual fan who watches it and then come the end of the year, there's 10 games and it's, you're sitting there with 3 or 4 wins, like that's going to be really tough to stomach.
Right.
If you're an upper echelon team and you're 7-3, it's like, but it's going to be more about the play. It has to be, because if your sample size is less, then you have to be more critical about what you're actually watching, because you just don't have the amount of quantity to review. So you have to be more critical of exactly what you're watching there. And I think that's really the only way to evaluate forward or backward movement for any of the teams, specifically in the SEC.
Yeah, I that's a good comment. In the game, when you look at this schedule, it's hard to say that they should beat Kentucky or Tennessee. But the flip side of that is it's hard for me to also say Kentucky should beat Tennessee in South Carolina, and for Tennessee should beat Kentucky and South Carolina. You know what I mean? So. Yep. These 3 teams, right, have so much to gain in whatever season is played this year. Based on, I think it'll be a revolving door of those. They're all going to probably beat each other at some point somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope, for my sake of things, the Gamecocks might get a little bit better into that deal. But we don't know. I mean, the Tennessee's good and Garantano's back. I mean, those 2 teams return. What's interesting about the East? Think about the quarterback situation real quick. You got two transfers in Georgia who they're going to battle. One of them, either one of them is going to have a pretty good year.
Phil expected Newman when we talked to him on Friday to come out over JT Daniel.
JT. But either way, they're in pretty good hands.
Yes.
Florida's got Trask. South Carolina's got a great quarterback problem. I mean, Colin Hill is a great problem to have for Ryan Helinski.
Security blanket.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are going to battle, I mean, it's good to have that competition. Kentucky's got Wilson back, Garantano's back in Knoxville. The question marks of Missouri and Vanderbilt, they have no experience at the quarterback position, but those other five have a lot. So it'll be a very interesting Eastern Division. Before we run, though, I want to point out a couple of other things in this top 25. So there's 5 teams from the Big Ten. I think 4 in the top 15 from the Big Ten. So, again, expected to be really good at the top.
Yeah.
And then, the middle of the league is where I will – that's where I always decide, okay, how good is this league? Let me see what the blue-collar group looks like here. And I think the Big Ten is going to be pretty good again this year. But I do want to point out the ACC because they have 4 teams, Clemson, and then those 3 from the Coastal that I mentioned just a few moments ago where he's got – North Carolina, Miami, and Virginia Tech all ranked in succession starting at number 16 with the Tar Heels and then the Hurricanes at 17 and Virginia Tech at 18. Clemson dodges all of them. Mm-hmm. They've got Pitt and Virginia from the Coastal. They do have 8th-ranked Notre Dame on their schedule. But I'm not one of those beat up on the Tigers because they don't play anybody people. The fact is, generally, no, they don't really play anybody. But it's not their problem. That is up to everybody else. That's up to South Carolina to actually give them a game at the end of the year. It's up to Notre Dame. It's up to Virginia. It's up to Florida State. Whoever they draw on their schedules, who they draw, it's up to these teams to be worth a crap when they play them. So that's not Clemson's fault. I mean, to be honest, if you ask those players, they probably love to play much better competition throughout the year. I mean, who doesn't?
Yep.
I mean, if you're a good team, you want to play good teams. You want to play big atmospheres, although you won't see that this year. And the other thing that I noticed here, did you see who's ranked from the Pac-12? You got Oregon at 9. Mm-hmm. There's only one other team. It's Southern Cal at 11. Yeah. No mention of Washington or anybody. So he really thinks, and he said this on our program on Friday, he really thinks, and I think you and I have actually echoed these comments in the past in talking about the Pac-12, that, Clay Helton might be on the hot seat, but he's got a pretty good football team.
Yeah, and it's very, very similar potentially to what we saw in LSU. Remember, they weren't over the moon about keeping Ed Orgeron, right? They were debating whether or not that's going to work, and then he won over the locker room, and then that essentially won him the job. Clay Helton is loved by his players. Mm-hmm. So if the players love you, they're going to play for you, and if Clay Helton, who is on that hot seat, has the support of his locker room, and it's a good locker room, pull off a win or two that you're not supposed to get, and Clay Helton survives and gets an extension, and the Trojans are back on the national scene.
Well, and they're going to have every chance. I mean, they are playing a Pac-12, all Pac-12 schedule this year, as announced by the Pac-12. Not last week, the Friday before. They do, on their original schedule, and I'm assuming this game will be maintained on November the 7th, they travel to Eugene. So if both of them have done their part up to that point, and we'll see how these schedules lay out and things of that nature. If they've both done their part up to that point, Southern Cal is going to have a real crack at this thing to take control of the Pac-12, at least temporarily, this season. We'll see. But it's a good – I always put stock in his preseason top 25. And I'll tell you what, that A&M at 5, that should be very scary. You're talking about if Alabama and A&M play and they hold chalk, that's a top 5 matchup. I don't know when they play, but at some point in time in the season.
So that caught my eye. I mean, 3 things really caught my eye. 1 was that. 2, in general, as a group, the strength of the Coastal. And he went into depth on that. The gap between Clemson and the rest of the ACC is closing, largely because the Coastal is getting much better. And he's got Miami and North Carolina and Virginia Tech as among his top surprise teams. So he's thinking the Coastal is going to be significantly better.
Yeah.
How that's going to shake out, however the ACC schedule ends up working out. Does Clemson see some, any, none? until what may or may not be an ACC championship game. Who knows? But that's the two things that really jumped out to me. Like, oh, okay, we're really high on A&M, and yeah, I mean, you and I have been high on North Carolina for a while, but the entire Coastal, or at least half of it, Steele is up there. He likes them.
Yeah, no question. Alabama's schedule, by the way, all of a sudden looked a little bit more difficult than maybe it might have appeared only a few weeks ago because they do have Georgia early in September. That game's at home, but they also travel to Tennessee and LSU, back-to-back road games. There's an off week between them, but they travel to Knoxville. They travel to Baton Rouge. And then to finish the season, both A&M and Auburn come to town. Those are all ranked teams by Phil Steele. And we'll see where A&M and Auburn both are. We'll see where all those teams are when they play. We know where Georgia will be, but where will they be? By the way, Alabama, it was rumored just a couple of days ago, could be opening the season against Notre Dame. It does appear that's not going to be the case, but it is a very real possibility, as reported by AL.com, that they'll open the season with BYU.
Subbing an independent for another.
Yes. So we'll see if that comes to fruition once schedules are at some point in time completed. All right, plenty to get to. Obviously, where are the Blue Jays going to play this year? So that'll be part of our Major League Baseball conversation.
I've been on that. Remember, I told you something about that. We just never got it in the show like early last week.
Yeah.
And they're still sitting there wondering.
Season starts on Thursday, guys. Don't know where Toronto is going to be playing, but we'll talk about that. A bunch of stuff to get to in football. Gene Sapikoff as well. But up next, it's part 3 of an 8-part series with Lawton Swan from Clemson Sports Talk. We'll make our third position preview official today, and we'll talk about the running back room at Clemson. We know who the head dog is, but the lead dog. Who are the rest? It's full of talent. He'll tell you when we return.
DB's Cheesesteaks, the tastiest, juiciest, and now award-winning cheesesteaks in the Low Country. DB's Cheesesteaks delivers, and not just in quality. Download DoorDash, Uber Eats, or your delivery app of choice and have it dropped off at your doorstep. Original chicken, buffalo chicken, even pizza cheesesteaks, not to mention incredible cheeseburgers, massive hot dogs, and dynamite hoagies. It's all there for you and your family. DB's Cheesesteaks in West Ashley. dbscheesesteaks.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
Listen to this station on your smartphone. Download the app now on Google Play Store.
What's up, everybody? This is Patrick Davis, and you are listening to my friends JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
All right, 12:34. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show. Live, loud, and online, 12:34 on this. I mentioned that already. How many times do I have to tell you what time it is? On this Monday, hot Monday, July the 20th. Careful out there. Heat index today over 110 in the Low Country. And I would assume it's probably right around 110 in the Midlands as well. It can get quite warm in Columbia, South Carolina, and that's where Lawton Swan joins us. He is the owner of Clemson Sports Talk, clemsonsportstalk.com, Clemson Sports Talk Daily on Fox Sports Radio 1400 in the Midlands from 4 to 6 p.m. What's up, brother?
Guys, I didn't get my Gamecock intro this week. What's going on?
Sorry about that. Maybe next time.
We're working on it. We got to make some adjustments to it, but we're going to blow the doors off next week, okay?
I hear you.
All right, Lawton, thanks for joining us again. We'll look at the running back room here in just a minute as we continue to preview the position groups for Clemson with you week in and week out as we head towards football. I do, though, I want to So we had Phil Steele on our program on Friday, Lawton, and I want to mention a couple of things to you and see if you agree. I'm not sure if Phil has joined or will be joining your program. If he is, you feel free to promote that as well. So we were talking about the ACC with him, and he said that a couple of things. A, the Coastal Division is the most improved division in football, in his opinion. B, that the gap has significantly closed between the rest of the ACC and Clemson, although it is still Clemson and everybody else. There's no question in his mind, in particular in their own division, but the gap has shrunk. And his top 25 recently released, and we had kind of touched on some of this with him in a little bit of a preview on Friday. Clemson, of course, in there at number 2. But he's got 3 from the Coastal Division at 16, 17, and 18, starting with the Tar Heels. And then at 17, Miami, and at 18, he's got Virginia Tech. So saying all of that information, do you agree or disagree with his assessment of the Atlantic Coast Conference?
Well, I think it's so difficult still to tell when you've got, just a handful of cross-division matchups to kind of dissect it. Now, from the standpoint of North Carolina, I do agree. I think they're going to be a pretty good ball club this year. Miami, I'm looking at Miami with bated breath. Like, I like what they've done in the transfer market, bringing in King at quarterback. But if this conversation were taking place 365 days ago, guys, I'm going, hey, man, Manny Diaz is like 45 years old, 46. He's got a lot of passion and energy. It feels like the team. They had a little tumultuous situation there when Mark Richt left and some players were transferring. Manny Diaz gets the job, and some guys were like, oh, well, we'll come back and stay. And so a year ago, before they went 6-7, I would have said to you today, I'd have been like, if they had gone 10-3 or something a year ago, I'd be all over it. But I'm still looking at Miami with bated breath and kind of waiting to see. And then Virginia Tech, I think that Justin Fuente's got to have a big year. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on him in Blacksburg. And I think from that standpoint, I don't know that we know enough about them. But of those 3 teams, I think UNC to me feels like the safest bet. The other 2, I'm kind of with a wait-and-see approach, if that's fair. But I don't know how much the league has, quote, called up to Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, we won't really know, right, obviously, until they play. And to your point with Miami, I mean, if you look, I mean, it was maybe the strangest playing out of a schedule that we saw last year in 2019. I think Darren and I really got into this a couple of weeks ago when we were going through our preseason projections for each of these divisions. And remember, Lawton, like they started the year, they had Florida and North Carolina, and they barely lost to 8th-ranked Florida, and you thought, okay, well, Miami, they might be on the verge of doing something special under Manny. And then they lose to North Carolina the next week, but North Carolina had just beaten South Carolina, so the Tar Heels start off 2-0, and you're like, wow, maybe North Carolina's just really good. And then they turn around and they win a couple games, but they squeaked by Central Michigan, and you're like, man, I don't know if this is going to work out. And then they lose to Virginia Tech, and at that point in time, if you go back, Lawton, Virginia Tech could barely score. They couldn't score. And then all of a sudden they hang 42 on a Manny Diaz defense against the Hurricanes down in Coral Gables. But then they turn around the next week, Miami does, and upsets Virginia. And then they lose to Georgia Tech somehow in overtime. It was so strange. And they run off 3 wins, and then they finish the year by losing to Florida International, Duke, and La Tech. They didn't even show up for the bowl game. I mean, it was the weirdest season. So when you say the bated breath comment, I agree with what you're saying. They've brought in Rhett Lashley to help score some points, and Derek King. Maybe they can get some offensive woes figured out. I mean, they do have a dynamic defensive line. They got the Roche kid who transferred in from Temple. So they've got talent. It's just it's just a matter of whether they'll win games on Saturdays or not. Kind of how people talk about Will Muschamp. Like, they got talent, but can they win on Saturday?
Yeah, it's a similar argument I think that Clemson had under, and I think it's way too early to judge Manny Diaz this way. Okay, but it's kind of like when Clemson had Tommy Bowden at the coach. Like, you knew they had some talent, but as quickly as they could find a way to beat a Florida State, they lose to a Duke. And so from that standpoint, I put a lot of the success that programs have on the head coach. I really do. I mean, I think the Nick Sabans, the Dabo Swinney's of the world, I think Urban Meyer's proven it at a couple of stops during his career that the head coach can really do a lot for wins and losses on Saturdays. Just having 18 to 22-year-old guys prepared to go. I don't know that we know that Manny Diaz can or can't do that right now. I think the assumption a year ago at this point was Manny Diaz would be able to do that and they would be successful. I think now, fast forward and seeing what that year looked like and the way it finished, and you go, can he? And do those guys, in the Miami Gardens, Coral Gables area, do they buy into on a week by week basis what their coach is selling them? And I don't think we know just yet.
Talking with Lawton Swan, Clemson Sports Talk. And if we're talking coaches, we'll get to the running backs here in a second. I read an interesting thought, I guess, last week saying maybe PJ Fleck at Minnesota is the next Dabo and the Gophers can be the next Clemson because of the personalities. Have you seen enough of PJ Fleck to compare him to Dabo and whether or not that statement has any legs?
A little bit, I think, just because of his youth and his enthusiasm and the way he kind of finds catchphrases and things to run with. It sort of reminds you of Dabo Swinney. Now, I think Minnesota, maybe in the history of college football, if you look all the way back, has 5 or 6 national titles. So they've got a very good pedigree, but a lot of that happened back in the 1930s, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. I think if he were at Michigan, I would buy in on that in a hurry. I still think for the Golden Gophers to have sustained success is a little bit far-fetched for me. And I think at a more what we would consider a more power-centric program, he would be that. Yeah. I think it's really more the program than Fleck for me at this point.
On Twitter at Clemson Sports, Lawton Swan. He is the owner of Clemson Sports Talk, clemsonsportstalk.com. Also in Columbia, for you Tiger fans that are in the Midlands that you're consumed by the garnet and black all day, but you'd like to get that orange fix. Fox Sports Radio 1400 daily from 4 to 6 p.m. All right, Lawton, let's move to the running back room with Clemson. It is headlined by Walter Payton and, of course, Barry Sanders still on the roster up there. I'm just kidding. I do this with Lawton every week because they just have so many studs.
Because you're bitter is why.
No. I mean, in all truth, Travis Etienne returns. We'll just start there. Look, I don't think there's any question that Travis Etienne is the best tailback in college football. He's also the leading returning wide receiver, well, at least by number of catches. Coming back from last year with the loss of Justin Ross. So Etienne is back. In his senior year, all those catches underneath his belt, Lawton, obviously he's the best tailback in the sport. I was surprised that he did return for his senior year, but is he going to be utilized this year, in your opinion, very similar roles that he has been in the first 3 years, or will we see maybe a little bit more of toting the rock, or are they going to try to throw him the football a little bit more? What is your take on how he fits in the offense once again?
I think it'll be a little more versatile for Clemson this year, and I think they'll continue. I think part of the reason he returned is I think he recognizes that they're talented enough that he's not going to have like a boatload of carries necessarily and a ton of wear and tear taken off of his body. And that's the biggest key for these running backs really is the lifeblood of their career comes down to how many times they're hit and tackled and all of that. And it's a very short NFL career, which again begs the question, why return? But I really think that he looked at it and recognizes that they don't overwork him. They really protected him a year ago and really utilized him more in the college football playoff, especially in the passing game. And I think I told you guys this maybe a month or two ago, right after McCaffrey signed the big contract in the NFL with the Carolina Panthers. I think if you are a running back collegiately and catching the ball out of the backfield hasn't been something that is of significance to your game, I think you want to add that as quickly as possible because I think you can offset. There was a day and age where in the NFL, a running back would be drafted very early on. It wasn't a big deal. That's kind of gone away because that pound Earl Campbell style back doesn't last very long in the league traditionally in this era. And so I think Etienne stands to maybe gain a good bit by showing his versatility and offsetting any potential draft loss and maybe make it up by and proving that he's more versatile. So I really like what Clemson, I think, is going to try to do with him this year. It will be interesting now that Jeff Scott's moved on to see how Tony Elliott sort of runs things all by himself. I do believe, however, since Tony Elliott was in the booth, he's had the majority of the say in how things play out offensively for Clemson. But Etienne's done something that is very rare in college football. I mean, as his career's gone on, his yards per carry just continues to hover above 8. And that's just crazy when you think about it, given what's supposed to happen, the more times you carry the ball, that number should start to diminish back towards 3.5, 4 range. But he's just kept that thing full throttle his entire career.
How often do you anticipate seeing both him and Lynn J. Dixon on the field at the same time?
Not very, I don't think. I mean, at this point, I really don't think you're going to see it. And Clemson's not, they're not going to get too gimmicky in that scenario. I think that they'll be utilized as, I think ETN's carries will be limited by the fact that, they're going to bring in Lynn J. Dixon and give him more opportunities as well. And, the bigger story may not have been that ETN didn't go pro. It may be that Lynn J. Dixon decided to stay. And, I think coming into the spring, you still had sort of that question about Lynn J. Dixon to a degree, because the year prior, you might remember, it was Tavian Feaster who was still there at Clemson during the spring, was saying all the right things coming out of the spring game, and then boom, he was gone to South Carolina. So I think that some people still thought that maybe Lynn J. Dixon at some point might make a move, but right now everything's setting up for the Tigers to have a heck of a tandem at running back.
Is there someone that we don't know? So maybe one of the younger guys that is probably a 4 or 5 star, but the average fan, is hung up on Dixon and ETN, and for good reason. But the next guy down, because if Clemson is pounding someone like they have been in the first quarter, first half, then we're going to see 3, 4 guys down the depth chart. Who should we be looking out for?
I think DeMarcus Bowman, the 5-star freshman, is probably the guy, especially now that you get 4 games for these young men to play. We kind of touched on that last week, I think, with the defensive line. It's so similar because, there was an age where you'd have to preserve a guy like that all season long and never even showcase him late in the ball game. But, I think when you talk about a combination of CJ Spiller and James Davis, sort of a power and speed guy, he's really going to give Clemson that versatility, I think, and ultimately will be somebody I think you're really going to be excited to kind of watch and see how his career does unfold. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say I always have a little bit of hesitation for guys that play that way for whatever reason. I don't know what it is about his build and the way he runs. I tend to buy into more of a CJ Spiller kind of elusive running back more than the guy that's going to truck stick you every once in a while. But I mean, that's kind of what he brings to the table. I think he might even be similar to Travis Etienne to a degree, but a little bit more powerful runner, in my opinion.
Lawton Swan, 12:48 Monday afternoon as we preview the running back group for the Clemson Tigers. Lawton, let's talk about Mikey Dukes. He's a First Baptist product right here from Charleston, South Carolina. He got in a few games last year. I think he had about 150 total yards toting the rock, 5'10", 195 pounds sophomore. We saw him in high school at the Skeeza level, coached by Johnny Waters, excellent football coach here in our neck of the woods. This kid can flat out play. When he ended up committing to attend Clemson University, some question why, Mike? You could go other places and probably be the guy a lot quicker than you can up there because Travis was there and Lynn J. and they knew that guys like Bowman were coming in and others. But Mikey Dukes has seemed to have found a little bit of a spot in that running back rotation to earn some. He certainly earned some PT last year, a lot of it in blowout mop-up duty, so to speak. But will his role increase this year?
It's going to sound so cliche, but you can't measure the size of a dude's heart, and Mikey Dukes has that. And so I think that's the one thing that can I'm not going to call it – I'm not going to say separate, okay, because I don't think that's fair for Dukes because I don't know that he's necessarily capable of separating right now from this crowd. But being prepared for your time and showing the coaches that they can trust you, not putting the ball on the ground in practice, doing the little things to be ready to go, man, if you earn the trust of a coaching staff, you got an opportunity. And this is a guy, he's a smaller kid. He's not huge, but he put on some good weight. He's also got great balance. I really like what he brings to the table from that standpoint. But I think ultimately for Mikey Dukes, he's probably always going to be a backup at Clemson. But that doesn't mean that you can't still state your place in the minds and hearts of Clemson Tiger fans. I think we've seen that with guys like Reggie Merriweather in the past. You just have to put in your time. Kyle Browning is another kid who I think a lot of Clemson fans will remember. You just have to, you put in the grind during practice. You show the coaches they can trust you, and, you get your chance to showcase yourself on Saturdays. But, yeah, I mean, he's a kid that from all indications from the word go has been really bought into what Clemson's trying to do. And you hate that it's such a crowded locker room. I mean, for a guy like that. And it's just a part of it. But, I think what you see is that if you recruit the right players, they're willing to accept their roles and the success that comes along with it. I think it's probably a lot more fun to be in college at Clemson and get some opportunities, but play on the biggest stage than to go to some other school where you finish with, 3-5 wins and you just feel bad all season long. So there's something to be said for young men that can see that aspect of it and continue to pour into a program like Clemson.
Yeah, have you heard, Mikey obviously did a lot in high school. I think last year he got a couple of looks, but have you heard anything about maybe getting some looks here in 2020 on special teams? He's dynamic with the ball in his hands.
I haven't, but we talked about this, I think maybe a month or so ago. I think Clemson still in the punt return game is something to kind of keep your eye on. And, you guys asked me, I think, about the kick return game, and I think I threw Joseph Ngata's name out there. But I think that is an area where anybody and everybody who shows that they're capable is probably in the mix, because ultimately that hasn't been something per se that's been weaponized at Clemson through the years. We know how they've tried to mitigate the kick return from college football. But really, there was even a time not all that long ago where Clemson's punt return mindset was really more of a possession type thing. Just give our offense the ball. We don't care where it is. And so to see something like that become a weapon would be a big deal, I think, for Tiger fans.
How about Ches Malusi? Because a lot of, I might say that name, and unless you're a diehard fan of Clemson football, you're like, who? Because, you mentioned Travis Etienne, you mentioned Lynn Jay. We all know about DeMarcus Bowman coming in as a 5-star, maybe the top running back in the country. In our neck of the woods, everybody knows about Mikey Dukes. But here's Ches Malusi, this kid who was like a top, 120 or 130 player only a couple of years ago. He was ranked a top 15 or top 20 running back in the country. Generally, when you're that type of kid, you get to go play. You get to go as a freshman and truly, really play some football, and eventually probably end up as the feature back in whatever program you chose. But that's not necessarily the case. Does he have a role on this team? And what is in your opinion the long-term outlook for Ches Malusi as far as being a Clemson Tiger?
Yeah, that's so.
I hate to ask that question.
Well, look, man, you always joke about the depth at Clemson, and Malusi is one of those guys that kind of falls into that category for me too, because high 4-star kid, it has shown some explosiveness. I think some fair comparisons have been made to him and a Wayne Gallman, who was a former starter at Clemson. I think that the playing time deal will maybe eventually catch up with him, and he might be one that would look to go somewhere else. But when you listen to a guy like that and see that, again, these guys are all saying the right things, and nobody's like, there have been players, and you've covered them and I've covered them, where you get this vibe about them like, yeah, they could pack up and go at any time. And I've always felt that way about Cornell Powell, but he's stuck it out and he stayed around and he's stayed in the grind. And Malusi doesn't give you that vibe at all. And so I have no reason to feel like at some point down the line, the locker room or the amount of talent would catch up with him. But we've already seen how explosive he could be. And he's such an interesting dude. He's a fun guy. He's got Italian heritage in his family. His dad owns a restaurant. It's really neat. He's really a neat kid. And I'll tell you this, if he had a breakout year, I don't know that I'd be happier for anybody in that running back room than a guy like Ches Malusi, simply because he's so highly thought of and yet really hasn't had a whole lot of chance to showcase himself.
You cover recruiting, as much as anyone else. And it's got to be, to some degree, hard. I know it's a luxury, but it also has to be hard to keep recruiting the best of the best when the best of the best is sitting there in front of that guy anyway. What's the balance there? How do you strike that chord, that fine line of we're going to keep going out and getting the best quarterback and getting the best running back, even though the best is already sitting in front of them?
It's amazing, honestly, because I think that as a head coach, that's probably one of the, probably the second toughest thing. I mentioned earlier, getting your guys ready on Saturday. The other thing is convincing a guy who's a 4-star or 5-star kid to come into a loaded locker room and not be the guy for a while. I think that the adjustment of the 4 games has been huge. I think that for Clemson, to be able to allow these young guys to play, and for all these other programs, that's a big deal. But when you've already stockpiled talent, that's an even bigger deal, because now you can say to those guys, look, you don't have to sit for a year. I think convincing guys in the past would have been much more difficult. And I think probably third in the list of tough things is the 3-year player. And I think that is something, too, that Clemson is still very much adjusting to. And you've seen that, they've managed to overcome that so far in recruiting. How long can you keep that up? But that's a great question, man, because I really do recognize, and I think we all do, just how difficult it would be if you had a child to say, hey, son, look, I think you should go to Clemson. And he's going, but, Dad, there's Travis Etienne. There's DeMarcus Bowman and Ches Malusi. But the reality is, I think that you've got to say, it's bigger than 1 year. It's bigger than your freshman year or your redshirt year. I mean, this is about a career. This is about setting yourself up for the future. And I think that's where Clemson has probably accentuated that point with all of the things that they've done from the standpoint of, having guys like Woody McCorvey be a part of Dabo Swinney's staff. And, just it's the little things that they've done with, Call Me Mr. program and, everything from that standpoint and getting these guys invested in more than just football. And it really is. It's Jeff Davis is a huge part of that. And then, I think finally on that front, when you talk about who you're recruiting and the character of these young men and making sure that you're targeting guys that have a vision of their future that doesn't just pertain to what they do on the field. I think all those things are huge.
Really good stuff, as always, from Lawton Swan, ClemsonSportsTalk.com. I would encourage you to head to the website right now. The feature article is about James Skalski. We just found out today he is named to the Butkus Award watch list, the star linebacker from Clemson. Could they have another one? Of course, Isaiah Simmons won that award last year for the Tigers. Real quick before I let you run, just a little. My cousin sent me this morning. Some sportscaster in Louisiana did a quick 20 seconds on Trevor Lawrence getting engaged.
Yeah.
Up in Death Valley.
Congrats to him, by the way. We haven't met.
Yeah. Pass on our condolences.
Condolences
to Trevor Lawrence. Lawton, you know what I mean. But this sportscaster said Trevor Lawrence on the field at Clemson University once again giving away another ring. Oh, no. Yeah. I thought, now wait a second. Come on, LSU, you won one.
Well, and then did you see the end? He wrapped it up with your dad, Joe Burrow's proud.
Yeah. Joey B is proud of you.
I missed that. So, that's good though.
Yeah. It was pretty funny, but I think Trevor will get the last.
A lot of shade, man. A lot of shade. It's tough being on top, guys. It's tough being on top.
I know.
Yeah, we're learning.
I know. That's how I feel every day. I get it. 4 to 6 p.m., Fox Sports Radio 1400 in Columbia. You can listen online. Go to ClemsonSports.com, on Twitter at Clemson Sports, Lawton Swan. We'll do it again next Monday, brother. Thank you so much.
Guys, it's always fun, man. Y'all take care.
Later,
you got it, man. All right, time for a timeout. Plenty of football and baseball to get to. You'll want to hear it. Gene Sapikoff as well at 1:30. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
Honey Baked Ham in Somerville and in Mount Pleasant is your home for catering and lunch. Honey Baked Somerville, owned by former Gamecock right-hander Mike Cisco, is just off the interstate and they are ready to cater to your next business or family meal. Plus, drop in for an incredible sandwiches daily for lunch. The Mount Pleasant location is at the foot of the Ravenel Bridge and always ready to serve and cater to your next meals as well. Plus, delivery is available. Honeybake.com to find your menu today.
What's up, guys? It's JB. Obviously, things have been kind of crazy with the coronavirus taking over our lives. We're stuck inside with family, finding ways to be creative and probably tapping the liquor cabinet a little bit. If you don't have Patrick Davis's Whiskey Jam in yours, put on your mask and gloves and head to Bottles or Burris liquor stores here in Charleston. The Blackberry is my personal favorite on the rocks, but the original Whiskey Jam is Patrick's. So either way, you're winning with Whiskey Jam. WhiskeyJam.com, PatrickDavis.com.
These drinks is gonna cloud my memory.
DB's Cheesesteaks, the tastiest, juiciest, and now award-winning cheesesteaks in the Low Country. DB's Cheesesteaks delivers, and not just in quality. Download DoorDash, Uber Eats, or your delivery app of choice and have it dropped off at your doorstep. Original chicken, buffalo chicken, even pizza cheesesteaks, not to mention incredible cheeseburgers, massive hot dogs, and dynamite hoagies. It's all there for you and your family. DB's Cheesesteaks in West Ashley. dbscheesesteaks.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon. Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the National Anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
All right, 102, welcome back. Hour 2 of the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online. Listening on the Podbean app, watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, at Sports Radio JB. He's at Darren Goldwater. Collectively, we are at JB and Goldwater across all social media platforms. And you can find us, jbandgoldwatershow.com. Thanks to Lawton in that last segment. Thanks to Gene coming up at 1:30. We've got a bunch to get to with him, including his column in the Post and Courier on Dawn Staley. If you're hungry, why wait? Grab a cheesesteak. I just stole that from Snickers, but you should. dbscheesesteaks.com. That's where you can find Charleston's choice number 1. Numero uno, folks. You have voted them the best cheesesteak in Charleston. They are in Avondale and West Ashley, owned by Danny Bailey. He's a good friend. He's a good guy. He's a big Eagles fan, by the way.
Really?
Huge Eagles fan.
There are a bunch of those Philly folks down here.
Hey,
I mean, it makes sense. He's got a Philly cheesesteak shop. He better be an Eagles fan.
Big Eagles fan.
Is he a Philly guy, too?
Yeah, he's a Philly guy, but he's also like a
I mean, like Phillies, the baseball team.
Oh yeah. He's a Philly sports fan, but he's not one of those obnoxious Philly sports fans.
There are a lot of those.
He's not that guy at all. Like he's a call it like I see it. Like man, we suck this week. I mean, he's that type of guy.
Yeah.
But he's a good fan. But he's also a really good restaurant owner because it's the best cheesesteak in Charleston. And it has been mine for well over 2 years now.
There you go.
DB's Cheesesteaks, they're in Avondale and West Ashley. They do deliver every delivery platform that you can download into your phone. They're on it. Don't forget to try my favorite, which is the buffalo chicken cheesesteak at DB's Cheesesteaks, dbscheesesteaks.com. And what do we say? Don't forget
Boardwalk.
The Boardwalk fries at DB's Cheesesteaks in West Ashley. All right, and of course, as always, we appreciate Patriots Point for presenting our national anthem every day at 1 o'clock right here on our program. It is the neatest museum we've got in the state. It is a museum in the state of South Carolina. PatriotsPoint.org to see the most amazing things you maybe have ever seen. the Laffey, the Clamagore, the Vietnam War exhibit, and the USS Yorktown. And you don't just walk and go, oh, that was nice, and walk away. No. They educate you. And you see things like inside the ship, like strategy rooms and war rooms and gun rooms and things. I mean, it's amazing.
It's awesome.
It is amazing. You hear real stories. So head to Patriots Point. Also, head to holycitydrivein.com because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings, it's their drive-in movie series this summer over at Patriots Point. It's a big, like 30 or 40-foot screen. And this past week, they have a great mixture of movies.
Yeah.
They had Dirty Dancing this past weekend, Monsters, Inc., and something else. I forget what the other one is.
I forget the other one also.
You can buy food, you can buy drinks there, back your truck in like a real tailgate. Let me tell you about this coming weekend. If you need to go ahead and make your plans, do it. Friday night, Grease is on.
Oh.
Dude, come on.
Dude, last Friday was Dirty Dancing, and now you're following up with another classic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, who doesn't love Danny, you know?
I mean, Grease it's one of those, and I'm not a movie guy, but Grease is one of those that if I'm flipping through, I'll probably stop and watch it at least a little bit. Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
I know it's a musical technically, but you have to watch Grease. Danny Vito. Pitch Perfect is Saturday night. That's not for me, but it is for a lot of folks. And Sunday, take the kids. Shrek will be showing Sunday night. Holy City Drive-In.
That's solid, too.
Solid. All right. Hashtag we want to play. We want to play. That's what the NFL players are saying. The Players Association is chomping at the bit to get going, but they want to get going safely. And I don't blame them right now, Darren. I'm really surprised if you don't really know what's going on. We don't really either, to be honest with you. But the NFL, essentially, from what the players are saying, has not enacted the standard protocols that need to be enacted and implemented to keep them safe this football season, or at least to start the football season. And you've got rookies who are already there. I think July 28th, if I remember correctly, is the final date for everybody else to show up. July 23rd, quarterbacks will be arriving on at camp. And they just want to feel safe. I retweeted J.J. Watt's tweet because I think a lot of this summarizes, a lot of what's going on. He says, we want to play. We want to be as safe as possible. The NFL can mandate that players show up to training camp regardless of any agreement has been reached between the NFL and the NFLPA. We still have not been granted the full and proper training camp acclimation period necessary as recommended by medical and training staffs. That's where they're going with this. They're like, look, doctors are telling you to do this, and you're not doing it. Why? We still don't know if there will be daily testing, every other day testing, etc. We still do not know if there will be preseason games or not. We still don't know how a positive COVID test will be handled in regards to others in close contact, i.e. in the huddle, directly engaged with, etc. A strong and fair opt-out clause for those at higher risk or those with family members at higher risk has still not been agreed upon. If players don't show up on time, they can be fined or considered in breach of contract, even if health and safety protocols have not been agreed upon or infectious disease emergency response plans have not been approved or have been approved. And then he finishes with this, what he started with. We want to play.
It was a coordinated effort yesterday with a lot of star players involved. Drew Brees was involved in this. Russell Wilson was involved in this. And the list goes on, tweeting out very, very similar messages. And the problem that I see, there was something that came out about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, the NFL and the owners, because of a projected loss of revenue, they're getting into some collective bargaining type stuff too and saying, look, we might have to slash our budgets and therefore it will also impact the players. And that wasn't looking very good. What came out today just before the show is that the owners are very actively working towards fixing this problem. They'll have a meeting today at 2:00 to continue to address some of these issues and hopefully all of them because they've known about this for months.
Yeah, why are we just getting to this?
Right. So this has been going on for months. We've watched baseball go through this. We've watched the NBA. We've watched the WNBA and MLS, and it goes on and on about the protocols that everyone has to adapt to and make those fit your given league. Why is the NFL now, a week before camp opens, just like, yeah, we should do that?
I that's my question. I mean, all this other stuff, I don't personally have enough information to have an opinion on it all. I mean, I would say listen to the medical advisors.
Right.
But that's my main question of all of this. Like, whoa, what have you been doing all summer?
Exactly.
I mean, seriously, we don't dub ourselves as this NFL know-it-all show because we don't. We that's not who we are, Darren. But, like, I think that makes our comments more relevant. Like, the common person is going, it's July 20th. Where have you been for the last 3 months?
Exactly. It feels like a bargaining ploy. And it's not a great bargaining tool to use because the tool you're using is the health and safety of not just the guys who are making you billions of dollars, but their entire families. Jeff McCarriger likes to say this a lot, local play-by-play guy, voice of cornhole on ESPN. He likes to say it a lot, that what COVID is it's not like if you're an athlete and you break your leg, like you don't bring that home to your wife and your kids. If you get COVID, you could bring that home to your wife and kid. Like, so if you're using this as a bargaining tool, and because it's this late in the game, that's what it feels like to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's slimy. It doesn't feel right.
Well, and the thing is if you're wrong with that statement, you're respectfully wrong because it does feel that way.
Yes.
It's the NFL's job to eliminate that assumption, and they have obviously done nothing to do this.
Correct.
And so I don't usually I'm not that guy. Usually I'm not the one who's like, "Oh, this feels like they were just playing this game the whole time to, as a like you said, using this as a bargaining chip." But it's kind of hard to not think that because every other league out there has been going through the pains of how to play from every collegiate league, obviously college football, which is what we mostly talk about. But, I mean, come on, every day there's news about the NBA, the NHL, and, of course, Major League Baseball from a safety standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint. All of these things. This is in the news every day. These people are doing this every day, and we haven't heard much about the NFL. But I think maybe a lot of us were under this false assumption that the NFL is basically working on this, and this is all going to be released, and then players will have the decision, right, just like baseball did, to either show up or not show up. Well, they haven't done that. They issued a letter last week about when you're supposed to show up, but nothing else. And now it's, okay, well, we're going to get this fixed. Well, you shouldn't have to fix it. Like, there shouldn't be anything to fix, Darren. Like, there should be things to maybe if you have to adjust or evolve, but the plan should be there.
And without a shadow of a doubt, that there have been countless medical experts consulted by the NFL, whoever they trust, whoever they're using, probably team by team and league-wide. That's been going on. So to tell the players, all right, you got to report now, and the players are saying, oh, yeah, we want to, but here's the issue, guys. We can't. Not until we know that, like, my kid at home is safe, and my wife at home is safe, and I'm safe. And the NFL should have had this buttoned up a long time ago. I think they'll get it fixed fairly quickly because
I do too.
That movement yesterday, when that started coming out on social media, it was strong. It was well coordinated. It was smartly done. And I think that will push the NFL to make sure that this happens quickly and not delay training camp.
Yeah, they have to. They don't have any choice here. I mean, in the NFLPA, here's what I really liked about this collective effort amongst players. The NFLPA did not instruct their players to go public. But what they did do, they got involved from a standpoint of let's release factual information. And that is exactly what they told ESPN, quote, we were involved to make sure that the tweets were on factual grounds. Like, they don't want players going rogue and saying things that are not true. They just want you, if you're a player, to speak out on the truth. Just say, okay, this is it. This is and this is one of the, and we're going to get to this Pac-12 story here in just a minute. When I say that the players are saying this is what we want, it's not a greedy statement. The players aren't saying like, well, we want this or we're not playing. No, that's not what they're saying is, guys, we want to play. We just want to make sure that everything is in place for us to be able to, A, make a decision on whether it's right for us to play, and B, if we make the decision to go forward, that you're doing your part to keep us safe in addition to what we have to do as players.
Yeah.
And that's very fair. Very fair.
Absolutely, it's fair. It's warranted. It's necessary.
Russell Wilson's wife is pregnant. He's got a legitimate gripe.
We've been going through this with baseball guys, with Mike Trout, who's got a kid coming out. Ryan Zimmerman has already opted out with a new baby, either recently or soon to be on the way. College football has been going through this with their safety protocols. I mean, that's been dominating the news from a sports standpoint for 3 months.
Right.
So the fact that we're 5 days out, 6 days out is crazy.
It's crazy. Among the NFLPA's requests to the NFL, they are requesting daily testing, no preseason games, which I don't blame them for that. I don't know who cares about preseason
That's
games.
probably going to happen. None.
More than likely. And this might eliminate them for forever. A ramp-up period, which is 21 days of strength and conditioning, 10 days of non-padded practices, and 14 days of contact acclimation. They want all that once they report to camp, which I think that's
very similar to college.
Yeah.
We were hearing how many weeks will it take for the guys to get ready? 3, 4. Sometimes it was at the 6. But, it's a violent sport. You got to get ready again.
Yeah, they just want to slowly work themselves into this thing. They've got a gripe. We'll see what comes out today and over the next couple of days. I'm with you, though. I do think they'll get this thing right. John Rahm got it right this weekend. Golf, John Rahm ran away with the Memorial. I mean, really ran away with the Memorial. It was a magical showing by him, especially based on how the course was playing itself out, Darren. Tiger, certainly a story this weekend, but we should, I think, start with John Rahm.
Oh, yeah.
And what he was able to accomplish up at Muirfield Village, where their stay is finally done. I know that he faded down the stretch, but he was in control of the tournament, winning it at 9 under par, 3 shots ahead of Ryan Palmer.
And he was assessed a late penalty also that he didn't even know about, but it was pretty clear that the broadcast was talking about it. His ball did oscillate slightly. It was in the rough, but it wasn't going to matter. He didn't even know it was a possible penalty until after the round, and it was on 15 or 16, and his lead at that point was, I want to say 6. I think he was at 11 at that point.
Yeah.
So even if he took this penalty, okay, you're going to win by 3 instead of 5.
Right. Yeah. At one point, he was 8 shots ahead of the field. He was at 14 under, and I think Palmer was it might have been Palmer sitting there at 6 under. Either way, he wins. Only 9 golfers this weekend under par. Only 12 at even or better. It was Rahm, Palmer, Matthew Fitzpatrick at 5 under, Matt Wallace at 4 under alongside Jason Day, and then Mackenzie Hughes and Henrik Norlander both at 3 under par. Tony Finau finished at 2 under par, and Kevin Na at 1 under. That's it. Luke List, Patrick Reed, and Xinjiang Zhang, they were all at even par. And then everybody else just didn't really have a good week. And yesterday in particular, you mentioned this while we were at break, the ball was really flying on the course. I mean, that was as firm of a golf course as I've seen in a while. Fitzpatrick shot a 68 yesterday. Was there anybody else in the 60s?
I'm not sure if there was anyone. It was a tough day. I mean, there hadn't been any rain. It was in the 100-degree range with indices above that. So the fairways were flying. The greens were ice. I mean, it was you couldn't stop the ball on them. Jordan Spieth hit a tee shot on a par 3, and afterwards looked at his caddy and was like, "What are you gonna do? Like, what am I supposed to do there?" Because he landed it, middle third, front half-ish of the green. The ball just shoots right off the back. And you combine that with the fact that the rough hadn't been cut in 2 weeks. They prepared it for last week's tournament, and they didn't touch it for this week. So this was a completely different golf course than the guys saw last week, and it killed them yesterday and Saturday. And, I mean, if you watched yesterday, it was hot, too. If you saw the end of Tiger's round, Tiger looked old yesterday. I mean, it was hot. He's sweating. He's taking off the cap. He's mostly bald, wiping it down. He's soaking through his shirt. It was not an easy day to be out there.
No, it wasn't easy. Yeah, that was the only round yesterday that was better than 70 was Matthew Fitzpatrick. So 4 under, that got him to 5 under. So he actually played the course decently well yesterday. But it puts into perspective what Tiger did a little bit better. I mean, you take looking back now, and I'm excited to actually talk to Scott about this on Thursday. No, Tiger didn't have a good week, but really nobody did. I mean, there's a couple golf. Obviously, John Rahm had a pretty good week, but the guy hadn't played in an organized golf tournament in over 5 months. He had 2 of his 4 rounds under par. He didn't have 1 round in the 60s, but 2 of those rounds were under par, shooting 71s. His other 2, he both shot 76s, and that collectively at 8 over in those 2 rounds, that got him to 6 over par for the tournament. So when you look back, Tiger probably saved himself from finishing at like 10 or 11 over. He actually did hit some shots that prevented a lot worse of a score. He also hit some shots that prevented a lot better of a score. So when you look back, you put it into perspective. No, he didn't have a good week. He didn't have the worst week he could have had. Certainly didn't have the best week he could have had.
Well, he almost missed the cut. He was fortunate. He was outside the cut line, and then the cut line moved.
The move. He didn't make it. The cut line made him.
Correct.
He made the weekend because the cut line dropped. But so overall, he played respectable golf based on the way the course played on Saturday, and then when you look at what he did yesterday, there was only a few people that actually played better than he did. I mean, nobody really played the course well. He was 1 shot worse than the guy that won the tournament yesterday, in John Rahm.
It was a really, really tough day. What's interesting about Tiger, though, it did show his age, and it did show his back, because in round 1, he was swinging pretty well. Round 2 on Friday, when he just had no idea where it was going, his comments afterwards were, he couldn't get through it. He was a little bit stiff. And then to see his body bounce back for Saturday's round, where he looked a little bit better and a little bit more free-flowing. That was good to see. And the other interesting takeaway I had from Tiger was I questioned last week whether or not the crowd helps or hurts him, because the young guys, and I'll include Tiger in this, he started this, really feed off the energy of the crowd. The young guys do, Tiger does. I mean, that buzz, that excitement, it jacks these guys up. Tiger actually said getting back into the flow of a regular tournament was easier this week without the fans, because he's like, well, it's the same as what I've been doing here, playing golf at home. The only difference is I wasn't on a cart.
Right. And now that begs the question, when do we see Tiger again? I mean, is it as far north as the PGA, which is August 6th out in San Fran? Do we see him in the World Golf Classic, the St. Jude in Memphis?
He said soon.
I don't
know what that means.
I don't think he will wait until August 6th to play again. I think he'll play in the St. Jude July 30th. I think he needs to, because it's still going to give him. I mean, that'll give him a week before he goes and plays in the PGA Championship. I would think for him right now, taking more time off would be worse. He needs to play.
Oh, I agree with that. And go back to when the tour rescheduled its majors and adjusted to the pandemic, and we started talking about, my God, late in the year, there's going to be a run of awesome golf, and not just golf, but sports. The PGA will have 7 majors contested in the next 11 months. 7 in the next 11 months. One other note on this. John Rahm is the 5th youngest to ever reach number 1. His company is okay. Tiger Woods, Jordan Spieth, Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas. He's the 2nd player from Spain, his idol, Ballesteros.
Wow. Seve Ballesteros. You're kidding me.
Yeah.
Good win for John Rahm yesterday. I don't know how that translates moving forward for him, but it was certainly a good win.
Yeah, he's the number 1 player in the world now.
He's the number 1 player.
So he's just 24 years old.
Yeah.
He gave I've got the picture up of the fist bump with Jack Nicklaus.
Yeah.
So
he tested positive for COVID, by the way.
He did.
He's okay.
Well, yes, him and his wife. What was interesting, Jack during the broadcast said, I'd be happy to shake whoever's hand it is. I mean, this was before it was decided. I don't know if that's like okay in this day and age, but if it's going to be up to the winner, if they want to shake my hand, they can shake my hand. And then John Rahm gives him a nice solid, like, bam, fist bump.
By the way, the whole locations going into yesterday were remarkably difficult.
Oh, yeah.
There was not one that wasn't on the edge of the green. I mean, it was just you knew it was going to be a tough day, and it certainly was.
Yeah.
All right, let's get in some quick football news here before we get to Gene Sapkoff coming up in about, 6 or 7 minutes. Rudy Carpenter former quarterback at Arizona State, tweeted out just a couple days, Friday evening, as a matter of fact, that Pac-12 football players, not all, but a bunch, have created a list of, quote, demands. I always love when people put demands out there. For the Pac-12 and their universities to take into consideration. And if the demands aren't addressed or complied with, the players are threatening to sit out the season. There is significant support growing among all 12 teams, with 50 or more players on many of the teams in support of this action demands list. The initial idea was to create a players' union, but they decided time didn't allow for this, and they figured the best way to create the change they want is to boycott the season. The things they're asking for, 50-50 revenue share. Might not be the year to ask for that.
Might not happen.
Okay.
Good shot. Good try.
Good try. 6 years insurance upon graduation. God only knows how they came up with that. Better COVID-19 testing and protocols. Need to be a little bit more specific. The player-led group is being spearheaded at Cal Football, proud program there, and they've been holding phone calls with other Pac-12 teams, and there is some kind of players-only meeting and vote that should be taking place. Really?
Yeah, the way you went through that, I mean, does this have legs?
No.
Probably not. I mean, well, first of all, we know what's not going to happen, right? They're not getting a revenue split. They're not getting 50-50.
No.
They're probably not getting 10-90 either, because that's just not the way this works, right? I mean, NIL will come into play, but it doesn't involve revenue sharing. That's not going to happen. You're not going to see revenue sharing in college football with the players. So that's out. The insurance, I don't know. COVID testing, they want to be happy with it and pleased and comfortable. But
okay, I mean, I get that.
Yes.
Isn't that what we're all trying to do
right.
here?
And if you don't want to play, then you don't have to play. But what struck me is just the number of players they're talking about as part of this, threatening to not play. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it spans the entire conference, and you're talking, I mean, well upwards of 50. So it's.
I'd love to know the language in some of these scholarships, because I'd just be like, look, here's the deal. If you opt out for health concerns, obviously we're going to honor your scholarship. That's known. I think the SEC released a statement the other day. We already knew that.
Most have.
But if you word it this way, careful, kids, careful. If these demands aren't met, I'm sitting out. No problem. We'll take your scholarship too. And that's what I would say. I'd say, look, we don't have any money to give you, number one. Even if we did, we're not going to give it to you.
Yeah, it's also the poorest. That's probably the wrong way to say it, but conference. I mean, they're money from TV networks, and they're the conference with the least amount of money of the Power Five.
I mean, have they not heard a word of what has been said over the last few months? Like, dude, the money ain't there. It's just not there. You're going to be lucky if some of you even have a football program if you don't play this fall. Honestly, I hate to say that, but I mean, I think they would all figure out a way to survive. At least football would. But look, you're going to sit out. You're sitting out over financials and not COVID. Yeah, give me your scholarship. Just give it to me. See you later. You're not going to get an education. Good luck with the rest of your life. Take care. I mean, these kids are incredibly taken care of, Darren, and we all know this. These schools are doing everything in their power to keep their kids safe, to make sure that they have great places to live. They better than you and I do.
Yeah.
And they live better than you and I do. They don't have, I mean, I'm sure they have outside of what's taken care of with school themselves. I'm sure they have their own financial worries. Families all have financial concerns. I understand that. But you're treated like royalty when you were a major college football player. And look, man, we're just trying to get this season going so some of you can actually have a career in this sport and other careers doing other things, like using your platform as a college football player to get a job down the road. If you want to throw all that crap away because you're demanding 50-50 revenue split, which isn't there, be my guest.
It's a strange time for them to do it because of all the financials, yeah. And also because with the players getting more power and more of a say-so with a lot of the racial injustice going on, there have been countless instances of players and coaches standing up to their universities, to their coaches, speaking out for what they believe in, for change that has to happen, for
fine.
progressive movements, right? And then you contrast what has happened with the Pac-12. Like this isn't a movement of equality. This is hey man, pocketbooks.
Yeah.
It's a very different feel.
It's
very different.
It's greedy, and it's just totally unnecessary right now, if you ask me. But nobody asked me. I just gave you my opinion anyways.
We all want to know your opinion.
All right. We always want to know Gene Sapakoff's opinion. He is coming up next. We'll talk to him about a column in the Post-Courier about Dawn Staley. If you haven't read this, you will want to stick around, or you'll want to join this conversation. We'll also dabble in some baseball with Gene. We'll talk some other football with him as well. So a very good conversation coming up with our friend Gene Sapakoff of the Post-Courier. Final segment on the JB and Goldwater Show when we return.
DB's Cheesesteaks, the tastiest, juiciest, and now award-winning cheesesteaks in the Low Country. DB's Cheesesteaks delivers, and not just in quality. Download DoorDash, Uber Eats, or your delivery app of choice and have it dropped off at your doorstep. Original chicken, buffalo chicken, even pizza cheesesteaks, not to mention incredible cheeseburgers, massive hot dogs, and dynamite hoagies. It's all there for you and your family. DB's Cheesesteaks in West Ashley. dbscheesesteaks.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
The JB and Goldwater Show.
That's us. Because we play this.
And there are these guys in a band on stage bouncing on trampolines, and one of them is playing a vacuum cleaner on his face. It was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. This band was going for it as hard as they could. I've never seen anything like it. And I said to the bartender, I was like, who is this band? Oh, this is a band from New Hampshire called Fish.
One of the great conversations that we've had here that never gets old. Our friend Edwin McCain telling us a story about a little old bar in Charleston, South Carolina years ago, long before Fish became Fish, right?
And apparently they still
do
that set. And the bar, I forget the name of it. I believe it still exists.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't?
Well, the place might, but the name of that bar does not exist.
All right.
No. I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to go back and listen. I'll just text Edwin and ask him.
You could do that. That's probably a lot easier.
Get him back on the
I could
show.
go. I could ask Richard Todd as well over at 105.5.
Yeah,
because he's the one who responded and knew of the bar and knew of the, vacuum cleaner on face thing.
Never knew anything about it. Sometimes when he's writing Gene Sapakoff, he'll put a vacuum cleaner to his face as well. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, why don't you just text Fish and get to the bottom of it?
Yeah. I don't think we have their contact information around here.
Well, I think they're long-time listeners. They haven't been first-time callers yet. But.
But they're amongst a big group. We have Dan Marino as a regular, and there's just a bunch of folks out there. Gene, they're big fans of Darren.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
like the Darren is everybody's favorite around here. Not me, that's for sure. All right, real quick from your colleague David Cloninger, Izzy McQuamu at South Carolina named to the watch list for the Jim Thorpe Award, which is the nation's best defensive back. And I've said this 1,000 times. I'm going to say it 1,001. Izzy is a great player, probably rightfully on that list. But the reason he's on that list and J.C. Horn is not is because he had 3 picks against Georgia last year on national TV and ran one into the end zone because of Javon Kinlaw. So, but congratulations to Izzy McQuamu.
Well, I think he's going to be a high draft pick, A, and B, watch lists are the stupidest things I've ever heard of. I mean, you notice there's no watch lists in dating or, anything like that. If we had those, life could be completely different.
Oh, just imagine
Here's how
college.
I think it's going to turn out, basically,
Yeah, no kidding.
College. I mean, you know what? If any college kid is listening, get on that. Create some watch list app for dating. Get your quick million here before you get out of school.
It's almost creepy to think about.
I don't know. Do it not creepily, and then do it.
Don't whatever you do. Don't call it like stalker or anything like that. That would not be good. All right, Gene, we're going to get to some baseball in a little bit and some football with you as well. But I do want to start with the column that you have in the Post and Courier. The headline reads as this: Dawn Staley's rip of Haley, USC diversity reflects hard road ahead. And Dawn Staley has been in the news lately. You know Dawn. I know Dawn. Dawn's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful human being and a wonderful basketball coach. But she has, she's done some things since a lot of these social issues have come to light in America over the last couple of months. She has been involved in some protests. She has exchanged some tweets with Governor Haley, or former Governor Haley, who's actually a friend of hers. And now she's essentially calling out the University of South Carolina for the lack of diversity within their athletics department. Maria Hickman, who Will Muschamp and Ray Tanner adore, who is the Senior Associate Athletics Director for Academics, and she's Student Development and Chief Diversity Officer, was kind of pointed in here. Dawn, in your article, also goes on to say she's done a great job, but she's also expressed to her that she doesn't think that she is very well versed in diversity and inclusion. I do want to point out Maria Hickman. She is African American. Dawn, with how outspoken she's been and how respected she is, how does this message resonate in the public, do you think?
I don't know. It's going to be really interesting, Jamie. I, first of all, admire Dawn on and off the court as much as any coach that I've covered in about, 35 years of doing this. I'm not saying the most, but nobody more than her. And she clearly has enhanced her role as activist since Memorial Day and the killing of George Floyd. I think that's absolutely admirable. She's been really aggressive in some of her approaches here, and what separates her from many other coaches is that she will take on individuals and name some names. Usually people take on systems or, institutional racism and things like that, but, she's specifically named Donald Trump as one of the problems. Nikki Haley took her on, as you mentioned, and, went out of her way to identify Maria Hickman as a person that Dawn questioned her job qualifications. You just don't see that. And so when I say I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see if that style, Dawn will maintain that style, and will it work? Will it help? Or will she tone it down a little, or take a different approach, or will she continue with it and it won't help? So it's going to be fascinating. I'm really in her corner, and I would like to see more coaches, specifically white coaches, both powerful coaches and not so powerful coaches, speak out on this and kind of get her back.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Dawn is a respected voice, Gene, and that's where these messages really resonate, because whether you agree or disagree with some of her stances, you're always willing to listen, right? Because it's Dawn Staley, and so I guess as we move forward here, I would like I know what she's doing and what she's saying. I'm not saying I disagree with any of it. Actually, I applaud her. But I guess what I'm kind of trying to get at is, what does she specifically want to see from some of her efforts? Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, she has specifically stated, this summer that she's going to outline long-term and short-term goals that involve starting. I love this. She says, I'm going to start at home. I'm going to start with our athletic department and my program, and I'd like to see more diversity. and inclusion and things like that. And then I'd like to grow that out to the community, then the state of South Carolina, and eventually have that be modeled nationally. Her specifics, she says she will come up with some specifics here later. She didn't really identify a timeline, but that's admirable too. One thing, though, I kind of think Dawn probably needs to pull back on a little again is naming names or blaming people. It might work for her, maybe it will, but I kind of think persuasion is better than pontification, and sometimes she veers a little toward the latter, and you don't get as many people on your side that way if you tick them off.
I guess one thing that would seem to help her is the fact that Frank Martin, while not naming individuals, but he is very outspoken as well. He was that way on our show. He is the head of of the diversity,
the NABC.
The NABC, the diversity arm of it, I think. Yeah. With him in her corner, that should at least help the perception, I would think.
It should. That's, a really good voice to have. Frank talking about, anything that has to do with education or race is a powerful voice, no doubt about it. One problem, though, that she clearly is going to run into here is that these are tough times for athletic departments, and they're going to get tougher. And so, adding programs, even making hires is going to be tough, when actually what's going to be happening is that even at the Power 5 level, I think you're going to see an average of 2, 3, 4 programs get cut, and other people, on staff maybe get trimmed back, and jobs, get cut also. And so hopefully what Ray Tanner and people are saying to Dawn is, hold tight here. When we do get opportunities to make hires, we're going to really go out of our way to, dive deep into diversity here. But this is a tough time to ask for change, but it doesn't mean it can't happen.
On Twitter at Sapikoff, you mentioned Coach Tanner. Again, somebody you've known forever. Since he got to the University of South Carolina about 25 years ago. I've known Coach Tanner a long time, stand-up human being. Maria Hickman works for Ray. This is somebody within his athletics department whom he supports incredibly publicly. You hear Will Muschamp often as well credit Maria Hickman for what she does within that athletics department, as does Coach Tanner when he's asked about certain things that fall underneath her umbrella. And so I guess, does Coach Tanner have any responsibility to publicly speak on this? This is not a beef between Dawn and anybody. I think she's just pointing out what she sees. But does Coach Tanner have any responsibility to speak up on these issues?
No, I'll tell you what I think happened is that what Dawn just, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt, kind of misspoke. So Maria Hickman has really, like you said it, an umbrella. She has almost like 4 different jobs under that senior associate athletic director title, and one of them is chief diversity officer. So I think what Dawn was kind of trying to say is Maria Hickman's really good, but what we need is a separate chief diversity officer, because that's not really in her wheelhouse as far as her career, resume, and so forth. So it's nothing against her personally, but it didn't necessarily come out that way. And I think that she learned something from that. I think South Carolina probably would love to, break up Maria Hickman and other athletic department officials' titles to bring more people into departments and divide duties up, as would Clemson, the Citadel, College of Charleston, and everybody else. You want to talk about people juggling a lot of jobs, go to look at some of these mid-majors and what these, bare bones athletic department staffs and these people have to do. It's a heck of a challenge for them.
The chief diversity officer at South Carolina, is this how many schools have a position like this within their athletics department? Have you done any research on that?
I think most Power Fives, yes, I've looked. They don't call it that exactly, but most Power Fives have something like that, and it's, worded differently, but at the lower levels they don't. And, that is another thing. we're talking here about University of South Carolina, an SEC school with lots of cash, relatively speaking, but most colleges are not, at that level, and you'd really like to see more diversity and inclusion in these athletic departments. And, they've worked hard. I know the Citadel and College of Charleston has worked really hard to try to add diversity and has done a pretty good job from what I can tell. I haven't, taken a deep dive into it recently, but this is going to be something going on, obviously, guys, not just in college athletics, but in all walks of business in the United States here for a good long time, and that's wonderful.
Yeah. Let's take a little bit of a left turn here with you, talking with Gene Sapikoff now. There's an idea that floated out that maybe is gaining some steam of the Group of Five and the FCS moving to spring this year and maybe permanently. The more I think about it, I'm really starting to like the idea. Where do you stand with it?
Wow, that's interesting. I've just given it a little bit of thought. It would be fascinating to just steal football to yourself for the spring away from the NFL. That is something to really chew on. You still have to think about kind of how it might impact players in regard to the draft and things like that. But wow, it's fascinating. You're competing though with some other really big things in the spring too. Yeah, you get away from the NFL, but you're dealing with college basketball, at least for a week, the Masters, etc. But still, the elephant in the room, as far as your competition, is the NFL, and you'd have football all to yourself. And let's face it, a lot of fans like football that don't really like basketball or golf or anything else. And so, wow, that would be just like one of the biggest changes you could imagine in American sports in a long time.
But from a TV standpoint, though, the XFL didn't work, the AF didn't really work, but college football wouldn't have the issues that they had because college football, even if it's FCS or Group of Five, there's already that fan base made for them, and then the TV will probably follow. They could steal the spring and make money.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And you being heavily into, the television business and stuff, I mean, you know that better than I do, but I think you've nailed it. I mean, like I said, I think there's holes there for them, and it's almost like, hey, why didn't anybody think about this before type thing? But there's the COVID has prompted so many of those kinds of things in walks of life that will change us forever.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't given this as much thought. I would be very cautious, though, because you better get it right, because if you move and it blows up in your face, you've ruined it. For a lot of kids, there's a lot of lives who will change over this. And how does this correlate to the NFL? I mean, it's not like kids from the FCS and the G5 don't get drafted. They do.
No, that's the biggest issue.
Right.
No question, that's the biggest issue.
Yeah.
Well, and you're saying there's not going to be an Egg Bowl on Thanksgiving weekend anymore?
No.
Yeah, there's going to be so many weird changes. I mean, so many weird changes.
Yeah.
That would go on in tradition. But hey, a lot of excitement also. So I think the basketball coaches probably would kind of cringe, but maybe they'd move their season up a little. I don't know.
That was my question. I mean, you got basketball and baseball. I mean, think about this from our level real quick right here. Just think about the Citadel and Charleston Southern, specifically in town, because the College of Charleston, of course, doesn't field football. But you think about if you had FCS playing in the spring, how that affects Tony Scholl's group, how that affects Duggar's group, as far as getting fans out there and things of that nature. I can't imagine that those coaches of those sports would be very intrigued by this idea.
Yeah, and the other thing is just college football might be the most conservative people running it, both from coaches and administrators of any sport that I can think of in the country. And to make a radical move like that would really take some convincing. Somebody from the networks, sort of as Darren was alluding to, would really have to show them some tremendous numbers and make believers out of them.
Yeah, and to tell you what, it'd fix the scheduling issue real quick with Power 5.
Yes, it would.
Wouldn't have to worry about G5s and FCS and things of that nature. All right, Gene, postandcourier.com, on Twitter at Sapikoff. Baseball is back, Gene. I got to spend a couple of innings last night watching the White Sox and the Cubs on ESPN, and an exhibition game. Of course, Thursday is when things will really get going in Major League Baseball. Did you watch any of that last night? What did you think about the broadcast?
Well, I watched the Saturday night game between the Indians and the Pirates, and I'll tell you what the funniest thing that I saw was at the end of the second inning, the Indians guy lines out to Guillermo Heredia playing right field for the Pirates at PNC Park. He catches the ball for the third out, turns to throw the ball into the stands. Oh, there's nobody in the stands. Pulls it back. But yeah, this is going to be crazy. I watched a little of the Yankees-Mets game too that was on, and I'm glad to see it back, and I hope it makes it through to October.
Yeah, obviously I do too. Only 60 games. You know what? I was looking last night and this morning, just kind of storylines to pay attention to in baseball. And one of the things that continuously caught my eye, and you're a baseball guy, Gene. You're a huge believer in this sport. One of the things that caught my eye was the amount of young talent that is in this league now. I mean, you could literally go to every team in baseball, every division in baseball, obviously, and you can find a young player on every team that is a superstar in this league. And maybe in this 60-game schedule, this is the perfect opportunity for some of these names to really surface. But there's still some guys, we know them, but the general public doesn't know who some of these names are. This might be the year where you really see it because of what has happened, and now everybody can't wait to watch baseball. We're all going to be watching more games, and some of these names are really going to come to light.
Well, absolutely. At the top end of that young talent, I did go down to spring training way back in February, and I watched several games, and the two most impressive players that just made my jaw drop seeing them in person were watching the Blue Jays and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette. I watched them in Tampa just whack balls in batting practice all over the place and out of the yard. At the other end are guys that aren't quite ready to be regulars yet, but that we know around here. Seth Beer getting a trade to the Diamondbacks. He's in their 60-player pool. He's not played in the majors yet, but this is going to be great experience for him. And here's a guy to keep an eye on. The Braves' first-round pick from last year is 24th overall out of Dallas Baptist. Bryce Ball, a first baseman, 6'3", 235, tore it up in Rome and Danville. And he is in the Braves 60-player pool. He probably won't get but a few at-bats, if any. But this kind of thing where he's working out with that caliber of players for this long is going to be great for his development.
Absolutely. Really good. We talked to Corey about Bryce Ball last week, I think.
How about the Blue Jays and not having a home? Where are they going to play? They're going to play at PNC Park? They're going to play in Buffalo? What's going to go on here?
Well, I guess Buffalo, but I have a column tomorrow about baseball storylines kind of tied to, regional South Carolina ties and so forth. And Charlie Montoyo, as I know you guys know, managed for 2 years for the River Dogs, and it would be incredible if the Blue Jays could stop in Charleston and play for a while. That would be fun. But I don't think it's going to happen. But that's going to be weird, and I think it's going to make a lot of people root for them if they become kind of vagabonds.
That's a good point.
No question. Yeah, it's wow. I mean, we're 3 days away now from starting the season. All right, so you've got hopefully some storylines coming up on local kids. One of them, this is a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation for me, but we'll do it anyways, is Justin Smoke, who's going to be the first baseman for Mill. Go ahead. What?
Yeah, well, Justin had an interesting situation happen last week. He hits a homer in an inter-squad game, and it's one of the first homers for the Brewers. And he comes around, third base coach pulls away from him as Justin's expecting the hand slap. And then he gets home, and he tells the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, these guys are trying to foot tap me, and I'm having none of that.
That's right.
As I cross the plate. So, it's going to be interesting to see these celebrations and no arguments within 6 feet of the umpire. And
we're going to use megaphones.
All this stuff. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Take your mask off so you can yell at me. Okay. I'll do that. Yeah, well, I like this situation that Smoke's in. We were texting the other day. We don't really talk about baseball much when we talk, but he's got, we'll see what happens with Braun, how healthy he ends up being. But Yelich is up there, and Lorenzo Cain's in that in that lineup, and Eric Sogard, the third baseman who can swing, and he's supposed to be their everyday first baseman. But here's the good news, Gene. I mean, even though he's in the National League, they've adopted the DH this year, so they've got a bunch of options. I think in 60 games, Smokey's got a real good opportunity to have a great year with the protection he's got around him, experienced guys.
Oh, I saw something that because of their NL's adoption of the DH, where the headline was, Smoke may be one of the steals of the offseason for the Brewers. And also, I'm going to say, I don't know exactly all the managers he's played for, and he's played for some good ones, including Charlie Montoyo. But Craig Counsell's a hell of a manager, and I think he's so well respected, and that Justin's going to like that. And the Brewers are good. I think the NL East is the most fascinating division, but that Central is crazy too, and some people think the Reds are the best team, and I mean the Brewers, Cubs, Cardinals, that's going to be fun.
I tell you, I'll make a couple of quick comments here. Keep an eye on the Oakland Athletics. You can't name anybody in their starting lineup, but let me just enlighten the listeners. They've won 194 games in the last 2 years, and I know that the Astros have won the division the last 2 years, but we'll see what happens with the fallout with Houston if they're able to maintain that this year. But keep an eye on Oakland, and you mentioned the NL East. The Yankees are really good. Jordan Montgomery right now is scheduled to be their 5th starter. He might end up being their 2nd or 3rd starter, the former Gamecock lefty. The way he's been throwing the baseball, Gene, he's getting all kinds of pub up there in New York, and they really like him. Well,
I think he just had 2 hits in 5 innings yesterday or something like that, and no runs. He is really good, really humble. He spent the off season in Charleston where his fiance goes to middle school, or his girlfriend goes to medical school. He's terrific, and Clark Schmidt really might have an impact there too, another former Gamecock pitcher. But yeah, your point about the A's is well taken. They also are great about mixing and matching pitchers, and so are the Rays. And I think there's going to be a team like that gets at least to the LCS level. I'm not saying the World Series, but in a 60-game season, and all you got to do is get to 38 or 40 wins, somebody's going to get hot, and we're going to have a weird team or two, and that should be sort of fun.
I agree. That is what's going to make it fun, and the Rays are a popular underdog pick. I'm on that bandwagon too, keeping an eye on Tampa.
They're so creative with the way they manage pitchers and wanting each guy to be at a slightly different arm angle, and so that no team is getting a look at the same 2 kind of pitchers. It's going to be fascinating. And yeah, I can't wait to get this thing going. And like I said, though, I really hope it lasts.
I'm going with the Rays and the Pirates in the World Series. I'm just kidding.
Nationals. Got to knock off the king.
Got to take the king out. All right, Gene, we got a minute left. What do you have coming up in the paper?
Okay, we kind of got this baseball preview tomorrow at postandcrew.com with a lot of Palmetto State angles there. And then later in the week, I'm talking about that college football players shouldn't just have a say in what's going on, but after what the NFL players via their union and really questioning the league, we need to get access to college football players unfiltered by PR types, and let's see what they really think about playing. And then finally, Coastal Carolina, a lot at stake in this football season for them. They were going to play South Carolina. They have a home game against Les Miles in Kansas at stake here. It could be kind of a make or break thing for the history of their program.
Wow. Looking forward to that. Certainly. Yeah, that is huge. Hadn't thought about it that way with the Chanticleers. Gene, thank you so much. Look forward to all that. Look forward to getting you back on once baseball has started. Very excited for MLB to get going here in a couple of days. Thanks, buddy.
Hey, thanks, guys.
All right, on Twitter at Sapikoff. Real quick, National Days calendar before we get out of here on this Monday afternoon. It is, if you love this state, Darren does. Happy National Pennsylvania Day.
Yeah.
Happy National Moon Day. If you love to sit out and watch the moon, do it tonight.
Yeah, and no better spot to do it than in central Pennsylvania on the campus of Pennsylvania State University.
Okay. Happy National Lollipop Day. Nothing better than a good lollipop.
Yeah, especially in Pennsylvania.
And if you've been in any type of trouble lately, happy National Get Out of the Doghouse Day. Do something good to get yourself out of there.
I'm not going to tie that to Penn State.
No. I'm not tying it to myself at all. No, tomorrow's a good day. tomorrow's a good day. This is a good week, actually. Tomorrow and Wednesday are really good days. Looking forward to celebrating those. All right, we are all but out of time here on the JB and Goldwater Show. Thanks to Lawton Swan and Gene Sapikoff for joining us real quick. AJ Green going to stick around in Cincinnati. $18.2 million as part of his franchise deal to stay with the club this year if they play football. They will. When they play football. Thank you, Darren. As
Thank
always.
you.
For Darren Goldwater, I am Jamie Bradford. Have a marvelous Monday warm afternoon. We'll see you back here at noon tomorrow on the JB and Goldwater Show.